Hello, my name is Oliver and I'm a trans guy who make videos about LGBTQIA+ people where they get to talk about anything that they want that somehow relates to them being queer. In November, I traveled to Tunisia to relax in the sun, and I also had the wonderful opportunity to meet up with a local queer named Max. Max wants to stay anonymous, so we've covered his face and changed his voice. Also, as always, remember that this is Max's story and that every queer person's experiences are different in Tunisia and elsewhere. Okay, let's begin. Max now lives in the capital, Tunis, but he was brought up as a single kid to a divorced mother in a conservative state in the south.
Pretty much from the get-go, there was always something like peculiar about me, you know what I mean? I would rather play, either dress up or play with children, but act them in like a scene, or like, I was like kind of a theater kid, but it wasn't as prominent then. And I always had a proclivity for anything that is considered conventionally feminine. At a certain point, you know, being a kid from the South with a conservative family, coming from like an Islamic background and everything, there was kind of a disciplinary like entourage that has like kept me from, you know, being fully expressive as a feminine male.
As a young boy, he experienced his first intimate relationship.
That developed that I formed some sort of a companionship with the kids back then with the same age as I am. We were both like, what, 5? And we were almost inseparable. We did slumber parties together, we played together, we had lunches and dinners together, we went to the same school, same class. It was like a pretty inseparable, like they were meant to be twins kind of stuff. And at a certain point, we kind of shared a kiss. We didn't know what it is, but we actually did back then. He unfortunately somehow got into a car accident. It was basically me being introduced to what a depressive mental state would look like.
And Max also had to carry a heavy burden at home.
Mom is a partially blind woman. So, you know, being a son to a parent with a disability is even more work because you're expected to help. You're expected to grow up really fast and be able to, like, you know, point at stuff, describe stuff, help them, you know, get up the stairs, help them do this, help them reach that, help them with cooking, help them this and that. I kind of kept my feelings regarding like the kids, the relationship, the inseparability with the friend I had. I kind of kept it like a source of hope. It kept pushing me through, even though it was really depressive losing somebody like that, you know what I mean? Just in a quick manner.
Then he got access to where many of us find words that describe our queer identities, the internet.
2008, 2009, I was like being exposed to the internet, you know, knowing how to use a computer. The first kid in my school who was like always in the computer room, like seeing website, playing games, looking articles, doing stuff. I was like using some pretty dumb search terms. Men love men, man like men, something like that, you know what I mean? And it was in Arabic, so it's even worse. So, you know, after stumbling upon articles and articles, this says yes, it's natural, the other one says no. I basically stumbled upon like Wikipedia article that basically described what a gay man is, and kind of like a brief history back then, like a little bit brief. And from then I kind of understood like the framework of what I am. Like I kind of had the confirmation, oh, there's other people like me exist, you know what I mean? There's people who share the same feeling, the same attraction and everything. So from then on, I kind of began like a wild ride. Like I started seeking others like me, like seeking other gay teenagers like me. Back in the day, I was like basically 13, bordering on 14. I was already forming connections, having like my little own community. We like, you know, keep this secret together like a secret gay and everything.
Then he was introduced to sex work.
The financial status of my own family wasn't as good. Let's just say we were like lower middle class, you know what I mean? We were pretty much on the cusp of being below the poverty line. So by then, you know, while I was forming connections and meeting people, I was introduced to this guy who was basically running like a sex work ring. And he offered to, join me and, you know, you do this thing and you get paid like a pretty good amount. In my mind, I was like, okay, I already know what I'm gonna do. It's pretty much get in, get out, do the deed, and, you know, get paid and leave. So why not?
So he said yes.
I started practicing sex work. It's like hotel to hotel. You're getting called by this guy. This guy tells you basically all the info about the client. And the client is basically either waiting at the bar or waiting at the reception. You're gonna have like, a couple of drinks, and then go in, do the thing, and get paid for it. It was all kind of kinks, all kind of, you can imagine it. One wow, just use your imagination. Like, chains, whips, degradation, you imagine it. Each client had his own fantasy. And I'm telling you, clients are coming from like a pretty high standard for like a social status for a person. Even though socially suppressed, because they couldn't express those proclivities, in the bedroom, all hell broke loose. All is allowed.
But his mental health got worse during this time.
Even though it was bringing good money, I was pretty much, brought my family back up on its feet, and it's been pretty okay since then. But it took like a mental toll on me. Even though I was pretty conscious what I'm doing, I'm pretty conscious of that it's just a job, you're not an object, don't think that. But at a certain point, the idea got to me like I'm being objectified, I'm being used as a pleasure toy. It's sort of demeaning, and also created this barrier of isolation between me and everyone else. Like, if you talked to me back then, I would be responding, but I wouldn't be responding in the lively manner that I'm doing. I would be more like disconnected, nonchalant, pretty much indifferent, and that basically was a reflection I subconsciously was doing, because I'm hurting how much hurt I was. Not because of the activities themselves, but because of the cycle, because it's abusive in itself. You do this, you get drunk, you do the deed, you get paid, you do it again, you wake up again and again and again and again. And at a certain point, you're like the idea seeps into you that no one really loves you, no one really cares about you. You're just there for like a job or a deed, and somebody even considers you to be like their own object of pleasure.
Here comes a trigger warning. Over the next few minutes, Max is going to talk about suicide, so if you don't want to hear that, please feel free to skip that.
At a certain point, I attempted suicide. The first time, luckily, life didn't want me to go away that way. That was the first attempt. There was also 2 separate attempts after that. Basically, it was a lot of aftermath from the 2 years I spent, 15 to 17 years old, practicing sex work. The mental toll always kept coming back at a certain point. I was like, this is not it. Neither am I breathing okay, neither am I accepted by my family, neither am I accepted by society. I don't have anyone who loves me. I don't have anyone who really cares for me. Like, it's always like, but there's something missing, but there's something this, but there's something that. And at a certain point, I was like, you know what, end it. First time, failed. Second time, failed. Third time, also failed. And at a certain point, I was like, okay, so instead of running from it, maybe I should, just deal with it, just coexist with it. It's something that's going to be stuck forever. Not everybody's going to like me for who I am. And you know what? Fuck them. I don't care. I'm not hurting anyone else. And I basically started working myself through it. It wasn't really a therapist. It wasn't really the drugs. Suicide wasn't the answer. So at a certain point, I was like, okay, let me just accept it as it is. I was born this way. I had the proclivity as far as I can remember. I'm just gonna live my life as is.
Max was invited to be part of a world-spanning project called Where Love is Illegal.
Where Love is Illegal is basically a project sponsored by National Geographic and other entities. It's basically documenting like LGBT community stories and experiences around the world, and in terms of like an art portraits, like photo shoots, and also like an essay where the interviewee basically writes down a part of their story or a fun experience they had. It could be positive, it could be negative, it could be eye-opening, it could be just a casual story, and it opens like the perception of the world of like we exist everywhere. We're like splattered all over the earth. It's just not like, oh, it's a Western thing, or it's an Easter thing, or it's like a looked upon thing. It's just people are just people. They're born that way, I made the project. They shared it like on social media. The actual art expose was presented here at a German culture institute here, and when locals saw the portraits and everything, even though my face was covered with like a cloth, people recognized me for God knows what. Back then I was like first year university. Basically everybody knew it was, you know, harassment left and right, people just calling me the F word, threatening to kill me, threatening to expose me, threatening to this. It's the whole like vile stuff of like homophobia, from like somebody saying like, you know, some insult to you, to somebody literally threatening to end your life. And that kept going while I was in university for like at least 6 months, including the university's administration and also colleagues. So it was a pretty tough situation back then. But the only thing that kept me going was, you know, beside from believing in myself and also standing up for myself, is like the encouraging like comments and messages I got. Like people recognize from both sides what my socials are, how to reach me, like my phone number. I kept getting like messages of encouragement, people thanking me for being brave, thanking me for sharing their story and everything. It was a pretty satisfying moment out there. I was like, okay, at least I'm doing something. Okay, at least I'm doing something. It benefits people.
Despite the difficulties that come with being queer in Tunisia, Max wants to live there.
So I live in a country, I know what its rules are, I know there's like a law for like 3 years in prison and potentially like a fine to it. The social perception of like gay dudes in general, let alone like trans women, trans men, lesbians, non-conforming individuals, basically is not favorable. But somehow if you find yourself in like a pretty big city, it will most likely be much better for you to like assimilate and remain behind a veil of secrecy, you know what I mean? Not everyone needs to know who I am. But thankfully, you know, by then it was basically amassing more and more connection, knowing more and more of the community, getting connected with like association, getting connected with like civil rights advocates, activists, lawyers, you name it, anyone who could potentially be a good addition to my own list of contacts, and also to refer to my own friends.
Let's end the video with some thoughts on the future.
I don't want to like seek asylum or anything. I mean, from the culture I'm coming in, from the background I'm coming in, from the, you know, sets of values and morals I have, I don't think that I could assimilate into Western culture. It's like the individualism, the center, like Western-centric point of view around the world. Yeah, I don't subscribe to that. Like, I really don't. Like, sure, I can move to a country that doesn't, you know, prison me for 3 years for, you know, suck a dick. But I kind of think like, okay, it's there. It's not supposed to be there. It's like a colonial remnant. I could form a much more tight-knit community than I would be able to ever do it in like, say, a country like France, Britain, US, Canada, whatever. So at a certain point, yeah, it's the environment I'm living in. It's kind of a blessing, but also kind of a curse. You know what I mean? It's like there's a lot to be worked on. There's a lot of outdated laws that do not encompass the human soul's fluidity and forms of expression. But also, we're grateful that we have, like, you know, each other. We got, you know, a couple of association for us. We got this, we got that. It's not perfect. It's not great. It's not 100%, you know, effective. But nothing is basically perfect. You're always gonna find like a little black dot on a completely white rabbit. So.
If you enjoyed watching that video, please like, comment, subscribe and share the video. I really appreciate you showing your love in that way. If you also want to support the channel financially, that's possible via Patreon, but really no pressure. See you next time.